Okay, and we're live. Pedro Mamounis is what I was going to say. Kyle Mamounis and Pedro DoAmaral. How are you guys?
Doing good, Danny.
And
Great.
Kyle, you were just saying you're excited for Mr. Olympia. Why is that?
It's mostly just a joke. I did go last year though, because it was in Orlando.
What? And that's a steroid-free competition. Is that right?
It's tested. The thing about bodybuilding is it's like the best data on what happens when you take steroids. Because it's like so many guys, and they'll put, or you can find their cycles, and they'll tell you like their amounts, and they keep like meticulous. Now, this professionals or amateurs, like if you go on a forum or something, amateurs some people will take a picture of themselves like every week and their exact weight and like body fat. It's like, it's just so much data. So it's interesting. It's like, how much muscle protein synthesis can you drive on a human frame, using these compounds?
Are those guys that free and liberal with talking about their regimens of steroids?
They don't like to, but nobody's pretending that they don't take stuff anymore. But like some pros will say what their cycles are, or they'll say like, I take so many milligrams of this and that. Some don't like to talk about it.
Nice.
But yeah.
Okay, we'll probably get back into steroid talk with talking about probably talk about Liver King at some point, I'm sure. But
hell yeah,
I know you guys aren't Ray Peat devotees, but I'd feel odd not talking about him maybe at the beginning of the show. Do you guys want to say maybe your perspective of how he impacted the health world? Not that you agree with everything he says or anything like that, but maybe just your 2 cents on kind of his loss and maybe what it means, and maybe if at all it changed your thinking on things. And maybe Pedro, you can start.
Sure. Yeah. When I first found out about Ray, I really was not in a position to grab how massive the weight of his work was and what he was trying to distill to people, and a method of thinking, not so much like a diet, like most people mentioned, the whole Ray Peat diet that really does not exist, but the method of thinking about things in relation to life and biology and how they relate to some of his talks on philosophy and art. It made me think in a lot more of a creative manner, which I do approach in a lot of my projects now, a lot of the scientific stuff that I research. And I see the contrast with the way most people think about scientific endeavors versus the way Ray Peat thinks about it. And the lineage of people from back then, like Hans Selye, Albert St. Georgi. And it's a stark contrast that at least I'm able to make the contrast and use that to drive my work. Whereas before, I would have never made the contrast in the first place. I would have been the typical scientist that's doing the typical stuff in most labs. I think that by far has had the biggest impact on me. It's the way of thinking.
So you're saying you feel like you're following in a tradition now, maybe because
Yeah.
you're seeing that lineage like play out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pineapple Man, your thoughts on the issue?
Well, first I'm going to make a Instagram story, but no promises, but I will probably make at least one video. It's like maybe, a follow up to that Ray Peat Noir video that will also serve as, a tribute and kind of try to bring all that together. So I'm going to ask anybody that, does YouTube streaming and had Ray on, or anybody that has had any kind of platform and had Ray on. And if I make the video that I'm thinking of right now, there may be a section that has, a sort of montage of Ray talking to people, or people talking about Ray's ideas or whatever, like podcasts and streams and stuff. So if people want to DM me or email me links to videos that they did with Ray or about his stuff, that could end up in the video if they wanted to.
That sounds like the most heartfelt thing I've ever heard from you. It's just, that really has me off guard here. Is it? That sounds really good.
Yeah, well, I have like a thing in my head that I think will be entertaining, and then also, you know, good for the community or whatever. And I also have another project that I've been working on for about 5 years, which it was inspired by Ray. And if and when I finally publish it, it's like a long poem about biology. It will have a dedication to him, because back when I had a blog, which I probably will have again, I tried to write an essay about stuff he was talking about with the Le Chatelier principle of chemistry and evolution and biological evolution. And I just couldn't get it started. And then I watched Blade Runner 2049 in theaters. So this is 2017, like the fall of 2017, I think. And Ryan Gosling's character is reading Pale Fire by Nabokov in his apartment. And it's also his thing, you know, where he checks if he's still in baseline, his mantra thing.
Yeah.
So I got into that poem because, you know, he's just like me. He's literally me.
He's literally you.
And so what happened was I just started like jotting down ideas in the kind of rhythm and style of that poem. And I worked on it for like months, and then I put it away for months, and then we'd go back to it. So at this point, it's like 10 pages. So those are my Ray projects. As far as I would compare, just like briefly, because I could talk about Ray forever, but I would compare him to sort of like Gary Taubes, not in quality, but like. Not that Taubes came up with this idea, but before him, people really didn't talk popularly about endocrinology with nutrition. Like he did kind of pioneer that popular conversation. Of course, it was with like, you know, carbs are bad thing, but the idea that, you know, what you eat could like affect things other than just amount of calories, I guess, was probably what people were talking about before. And so, yeah, so Ray introduced a different perspective, but a lot more than just Taubes with endocrinology. I mean, he introduced like an entire, like a school of thought, I guess. It's just a whole school of thought, like with a vernacular and a perspective, and like a worldview.
And maybe that was definitely shifted your journey, because I mean, we meet in. Do we meet before? Do we hang out at Lex Rooker's house before Ancestral Health Symposium, or was that no?
No.
Okay.
No, just at the symposium.
But definitely, I know that you have diverging thoughts than him, but it was definitely in the whole trend of getting to where you are now. That was like a central thing, right? Is finding Ray's work and deviating from it slightly, right? Or majorly.
Yeah. Before like, I don't know how long it's been, but when I was going from like raw vegan to whatever paleo and all the different things, at that time, I kind of needed like an esoteric magical reason to change diets. Cause I had a lot of faith, and I would have to go through, like, for example, going off of any kind of vegan diet, you have like a crisis of faith. So Ray's style had the kind of esoterica within it that shepherded me. Cause I was really afraid of adding carbs back to my diet when I believed in the low carb diet stuff. I was like, oh my God, if I start eating carbs, like I'm going to start aging again, because I'm not aging now because I'm eating no carbs.
Because I'm 23.
And, yeah. And like my hair is going to start falling out because like it's not now because I'm not eating carbs. And like carbs makes your, like whatever I like, because I was on the raw paleo forum, And it's basically like anything you're doing that isn't eating raw meat is like bad. So it's like you've got this tightrope that you're walking, and it's like that with any extreme diet, right? Like you're on this tightrope and any deviation is bad. So yeah, the way his stuff was just like a totally different thing. I was like, okay, maybe this is, maybe this will be okay.
Great stuff. Okay, so obviously we can talk about whatever, but I kind of frame this episode in the three of the worst health trends in 2022 with Kyle and Pedro. And so what did you guys, one, actually write anything down? And then two, Pedro, maybe want to kick us off? Okay, so Pedro, what is your background? Like how long do you think you've been in the health world before?
All right. I started as a trainer and I got interested in health and nutrition stuff probably around 2012. It's when I started doing like boxing, and I realized, oh wait, what I'm eating really affects my physiology. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get into like science stuff until 2018, 2019. And it's only been until 2022 that I did a 2-year degree, a 4-year, but in 2 years. So accelerated program. And have really had a good basis on understanding things like endocrinology, biochemistry, and so on.
So you're saying you have a good background in navigating the health world.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that caught your eye, or what was the first thing, maybe a trend that you didn't, and we might butt heads on the vitamin D one, possibly, but what was the worst trend? What was one of the worst trends for you?
That I've done, it would have to have been the cyclic keto idea, because I was pushing myself into a ketogenic state so often, thinking that it was the right way to go about things. And then once again, what Kyle said, carbohydrates being something that would age you quickly. It's something I read very often, but that constant feeling of being an underperformer in the gym, in my studies, I realized quickly that carbohydrates were instrumental to getting good grades. My brain was working so much better when I added them in. That one had probably the biggest impact on me, the most amount of damage, because I could not get out of that state without understanding the implications, thanks to Ray's work, for probably 4 to 5 years.
Of the cyclical keto. And so do you think that who was popularized more this year?
Oh, I don't think so. I think Ray's gotten so much more traction this past year, especially the past 3 years, that it's very unlikely most people will ever return to this way of thinking again. But in terms of this year, if I did have to think of one thing right off the top of my head, it would be the ancestral way of eating. And yes, there's good that comes from that, such as eating organ meats rich in nutrients. But at the same time, when you start to replace normal foods for what you consider to be normal foods, like say white rice, for example, and you replace it for liver and raw testicles as if it's going to create this huge difference, a dramatic effect in your health. It's just not. It's a very, I guess it's almost like mental masturbation, thinking that you're doing something for yourself that isn't actually going to have a substantial effect.
I think you're right. I didn't write that down, but I think especially the Liver King, the steroid thing, that might have been like the final nail in the coffin for the ancestral tenets of that has been around for such a long period of time. Like Paul might have started.
Well, it's been around since the ancestors.
Paul might have started the skepticism, because I know a lot of people were skeptical of him, but the Liver King probably ended it. But that's probably one of the worst health trends that seems to be possibly going away after 2022, but we'll have to see. What did you have any written down, Kyle? What do you think?
I don't have any written down, but they're all up here. Actually, one that this is going to sound weird, but I don't know if it really popped this year. I guess it kind of started last year, but the seed oil meme. Have you been seeing that going around?
Yeah. Well, just that seed oils are bad.
Yeah, but it like got memeified.
Yeah, because of the there are some people that might be fed spreading that stuff around. I don't know how into it you've gotten.
Yeah, it seems like a political. It's in that spectrum of like lifestyle as substitution for politics, de-radicalization. Like, oh no, but like you know, your country, like there's something you don't like in your country, don't politically organize, like get jacked and eat, like don't eat seed oils.
Yeah, but clean your room.
Yeah. Like it's like, upgraded, clean your room. It's like clean your room and then throw out and then clean the kitchen of seed oils. So yeah, it's just a shame because like I've done a lot of work with that, and yeah, I don't think it's good. It's certainly not good to like eat a lot of them and to like cook with them every day and stuff like that. But there's so many people spreading this idea that they'll just be like, oh, it's like poison, you know, and just making the argument retarded, that I just can't. It's almost like I have to let it go because like I can't even talk about it anymore, because if I talk about it, everybody, like 90% of the people are going to have heard it from some idiot first who's just like, you know, seed oils, like, I don't know. It's like Alex Jones level, like seed oils make the frogs gay.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. They've poisoned the water almost. Like you can't get into a nuanced discussion about it when it's become so verbose and kind of like,
yeah. And it's so easy to counter the really ridiculous stuff people say that's not really like rigorous or anything. And then you only really have one chance to say something. So if somebody's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't eat seed oils, but it's like somebody already saw like some retard saying something totally retarded and then getting like BTFO'd by some like evidence-based guy who was just like, well, then, you know, why didn't everybody die in this study where they were given seed oils for 4 weeks, or like just something really simple like that, you know? That's over. Like that person will like maybe just, you know, okay, anybody who talks about this topic or talks about alternative nutrition is just an idiot, like for years after that.
Yeah, the crazy thing is when I got into race stuff, it actually calmed down my fear of like doing something wrong, you know, because on carnivore, the message was if you eat carbs, you could ruin all the work that you've been doing. Like your insulin signaling would be as bad as it was when you started if you slipped up and ate carbs. Like that's kind of the message of the carnivore forum that I was part of, or the zeroing in on health forum. But the funny thing is, like, when I got into race stuff, I was like, okay, well, eating PUFA, which is inevitable, is just like this acute thing. Of course, it can stay in the body, but it wasn't this like devastating world-ending event that is kind of being progressed online. But I think there are probably more sinister motives behind it. Like imagine not being skeptical of a new novel therapy being foisted on everybody, but talking incessantly about seed oils and why you don't want to consume them. There's something very strange going on right now. But yeah, any
you're seeing that as a substitute for talking about COVID vaccines?
Well, I hope I don't get another strike on this fucking channel.
Oh,
it's okay.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with COVID vaccines.
They're the best. No, so
they exist.
Yeah, I don't want to talk in secret here.
That's all we can really say about that.
It was seed oil disrespecter. So he's on Twitter. He's incessantly tweeting about how bad seed oils are. And then people had dug into him, and he's like some doctor, like so again, he was very pro-vaccine and things. So again, just taking that on its face value, what you're going to obsess over seed oils all day long, but then you're going to be like inject this new thing that's like never been tested into everybody in the world. This seems a little bit.
So he's like a mRNA respecter.
He's an mRNA respecter, but that was the first signal to me that something is a little bit off here. And then also, they don't talk about the many different kind of avenues you can talk about in regards to PUFA. Like, for example, I've never heard any of them. They seem to keep it on like a topical level. Like I've never heard any of them talk about like prostaglandins and things. And so it seems like, I don't know. It just seems like poor man's Ray Peat's view of PUFA or something like that. Like it could be so much better getting in, just reading Ray stuff directly or something.
Yeah. It's just they make it retarded. This is my first time being in something and then seeing it in real time be made retarded on the internet. Like this is Babby's first. Your idea is made retarded. Yeah. I'm sure that's happened to other people. Well, I think the internet hasn't even been around that long. So you know, especially like this form of internet.
We'll tell people a little bit about the paper that you wrote. The what was it? What was the title called? I'm completely blanking.
The why you don't want to be a fat burner one.
Yeah, the PUFA. But that's a fantastic article if anybody's wanting to get introed into these ideas, because you just go through it systematically, and I really thought it was phenomenally done. Did you write that when did you write that?
I wrote it after the 2016 AHS, because for that year in 2017, they asked the talk givers to turn their talk into what they were calling an extended abstract. So like a short paper, I guess. I don't know. I'd never heard that term before. I guess an abstract is like a summary. So a summary, but you know, an abstract before a paper is usually just 1 or 2 paragraphs, but more like a couple pages or something like that. So that was my extended abstract of the 2016 Ancestral Health Symposium talk, which I believe went by the same name. Yeah, it went by the same name. So I just reiterated the points, and it has citations for stuff. And I made it into 3 parts. So it's like, you know, reasons why you may not want to be a fat burner. And the first topic is the stress hormones that, you know, move you into a fat burning state, and how like that may be a reason you don't want to do it. And then, I forget if I got into like CO2 and stuff like that with burning fat in the middle, but basically like, and how that's different than burning carbs, and like conversion of T4 to T3, and how that is related not just to calories, but to liver glycogen. And then the last part was specific to PUFA, the third part. Yeah.
A little bit off topic, but man, the CO2 thing never caught on. I really didn't see any dietary camps picking up this CO2 idea. That seems to be so exclusively Ray.
If I can mention on one of Kyle's experiment, actually, one of the papers that you wrote, Kyle, on the saturated versus polyunsaturated fat given to mice, that I think that paper was probably one of the greatest evidence for why you don't want to consume high amounts of PUFA. I don't know if you could expand on that, to go over like what you did, because it was almost, it basically, I don't want to say like it completely terminated all nutrition studies, but most nutrition studies don't consider what the concentration of different fats are in the fat that they give mice. And Kyle basically said, hey, look, most of you guys have not done this. And when you do assess for the types of fat, we can see which ones are actually causative in terms of what causes the disease.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think these days people do that, but until like 2010 or so, I don't know, it was kind of rare. Most of those papers, most of the mouse experiments, they didn't do super well on a high saturated fat diet either. Like mice. Which is another thing. It's like, I feel like with the seed oil thing, people are like, oh yeah, kind of like how carnivore is good, because you're just eating, like, so I could just eat all animal fat and, you know, get like a few grams of carbs or something, or you know what I mean? Like it just kind of lets that. But yeah, there were some metrics like the glucose and insulin tolerance tests where the mice did a little bit worse on the high PUFA diet, which was like the fat was 45% of the calories. And I can't even remember now. I guess linoleic acid was probably 60% or so of that in the high PUFA, and like single digits % in the high saturated fat group. So it was like coconut oil versus vegetable oil, basically. So again, I'm not saying coconut oil is good for a mouse. So it's not like a perfect study, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a shame. I don't get a lot of citations on that one, because ResearchGate, it's like Facebook for scientists. They email you like, oh, you know, you got a citation on this paper. And it's always like the worst papers. Like my first paper in that lab was just like a regular estrogen research paper. And it was like it's like just qPCR. It was like a methods thing, and it just gets cited a lot. And it's kind of a shame because you're like,
it's sending
it's
them
not
an
the
email.
one that I want people to care about.
Please do not cite this paper.
Although I think my most read paper ever is the why you don't want to be a fat burner, because I think that journal's gone now.
It's
the Journal of Evolution,
journal, right?
Yeah, it was called GEVO. It was like the Journal of Evolutionary Health. I don't know what the O. Maybe it was like Journal EVO, like Evolutionary Health. It's not really a good acronym. I think that's gone, but it's on my ResearchGate, and people have read it there. And like, if you go on my ResearchGate, it has stats, it's like, oh, you've received this many. And like virtually all of my reads on that are from that one thing. It's probably the most read thing I've ever written.
It's a good paper. The first, of the trends of 2022, one of the ones I thought was the absolute worst, and Pedro or Kyle, if you disagree, push back. I thought it was mineral balancing. I'm kind of the opinion that getting to health through mineral balancing is basically impossible. And then also it doesn't speak to what actually makes a person healthy or unhealthy. And so I thought that, and it's not to say that I saw it and then disregarded it. I actually kind of used to be of this opinion years ago. Like, I had read Carl Hofer and Ann Gittleman and Andy Cutler's books, and they were all huge mineral balancing people. And they were talking about zinc, copper imbalance, magnesium, calcium imbalance. And when I saw this stuff pop up again, I thought it was interesting, because trends in the health world are always cyclical, but it kind of made me wince a little bit, because I think it's just a road to nowhere. And so I thought that was one of my 3 worst trends of the health world in 2022.
If I can ask, could you explain what exactly the method is by balancing minerals? Because I don't think I've heard this past year.
That's a fantastic question, Pedro. I don't think anybody knows what mineral balancing specifically means. It was just like a buzzword that I kept hearing over and over. Like, your problems would just be solved if you like properly balanced your zinc and copper. Like, how do you even go about doing something like that? You could take a hair mineral test, which has all of its own problems. You could try measuring the minerals in the blood, which also has its own problems and things like that. I just was of the opinion that was, so again, I'm obviously a person that thinks the metabolism is regulating those things. Like, it's my understanding that there are zinc like transporters in the intestine that are activated by thyroid. Yeah, like, you can't keep enough magnesium in the cell without thyroid, a la Jerry Aikawa's work. And so it's like trying to think about these minerals outside the scope of metabolism. I think it's basically a fool's errand. And so, but it's, not to be elusive here, but I think Morley Robbins is probably mostly responsible for this stuff. I think Morley's a nice guy, but I kind of hard disagree with this idea of trying to get through to health by balancing your minerals. So again, I don't think the term is nailed down. Kind of how bioenergetic has become basically meaningless, or pro-metabolic has become meaningless. All these terms start losing all their value at some point. But this one, to me, is especially kind of really useless. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. In terms of what you mentioned about it's just an integrated physiology. You can't just take certain nutrients and expect it to be balanced just because you take an excess. It's very true. I don't agree with taking excessive minerals in general, because their rate of use is not as great as, like, say, vitamin C, vitamin B, where it's the same day you kind of burn through them. It depends on the mineral in question too. And it's very easy to have an excess build up rather quickly of, for example, like selenium. And that's something I wouldn't mess with.
In terms of supplementing?
Yeah.
So you guys could clarify this, but isn't it if the cell is in a reduced state, like say you have zinc or copper or selenium, aren't those going to be destroyed in like a reductive stress state? So a person could be consuming all these minerals and vitamins and they could basically just be in a state of heavy reductive stress, and they could just be basically malnourished. But even if they were eating tons of minerals and vitamins, wouldn't that be possible?
Do you want to input on this, Kyle?
Well, I don't know about destroyed, but like excreted.
Would they be used to like counter the oxidative stress? Don't those participate in like a defense mechanism?
Oh, good question. When I think of minerals, and this might have been because I did like a biochemistry job for a while, but I think of it mostly in terms of like cofactors for enzymes. And so, yeah, like if your cell is in a bad situation, there's like slots, for the minerals. And then you got your sodium and your potassium, mostly potassium. And that's like simple slots. Like there's like very general slots. And then calcium has sort of special slots, and that can get fucked up real easy and cause like a lot of neurotoxins and stuff that like, venoms and things that kill people, poisons and stuff are either like kick out or pull in calcium and like cause your heart to, muscle paralysis or contraction or whatever. And then you get to like the more boutique ones like zinc and copper, and they've got enzymes that they like to associate with in special pockets, And so I think of it as, like the cell will take up, everybody knows the cell takes up potassium in a like disproportionate way to what's available. It concentrates it, I guess you could say. So outside of, I'm not sure like flooding the system with the minerals that you would prefer to have more of without, they're like, it's like, who knows, whether that's going to do anything if there's not like a spot for them to be held. That's the way I think of it. And there's all kinds of processes where they get shuttled around. I don't know exactly about the oxidative stress consuming them though.
If I can ask Danny, when you say like the reductive state of the cells affecting the use of the minerals, and so you're saying they would be free form, unbound to proteins, and then cause oxidative damage. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, I guess so again, you guys know this much better than I do, but isn't it like, so when there's reductive stress or free electrons, couldn't like vitamin A be used as a chain breaker if lipid peroxidation occurred? Or couldn't that be true for, so again, I should have read this, but that's what I was thinking, that those things, so those are nutritional factors that could be used up or destroyed in a cell that's in a state of chaos or something, or tissue rather.
Yeah, so vitamin A has conjugated pi bonds, and so it would be used to stop like a radical. However, the one that's used most often for that is vitamin E. That's basically why it's like an antioxidant. But it depends on the interaction. It's hard to say that it would be this one nutrient causing this one effect. It seems to be all over the place, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Yeah, I should have done my due diligence and read about this a little bit more.
Can we coin a term?
Yeah.
I want to coin a term, fresh term. The term empty calories. So I don't know if it sounds good to say empty minerals or like empty whatever, but the concept that, so of course, if you're just taking calories in, everybody has been trained that, to use the calories and stuff, you need things like vitamins and minerals. So that's the whole concept from, the 1990s or whatever of empty calories, like candy and things that are, relatively processed, like a donut or something. But likewise, as you are sort of hinting at, you need macronutrients like calories to use minerals and to use vitamins. So if you just, flipped that around and was like, oh, okay, so empty calories, are bad, but I'll outside of a meal, say, I'll take a bunch of minerals. Maybe some of them that's okay for, but by and large, like they're, the system, like whether it's digestion and absorption or all the way down to like getting into the cell and getting into like the place where they need to be to do some sort of job. You need calories to use micronutrients the same way as you need micronutrients to use calories.
Yeah, well said. I guess another way to frame it is, so again, I'm very skeptical of most kind of supplements in general. And so another thing that I saw that was very common among the mineral balancing people was you should balance these minerals by taking these supplements, you know? And so I think that's, so I had years where I had really intense inflammatory digestion. And so even the most benign supplements would really set off my gut. So I think that caused me to develop a perspective about supplements that possibly a lot of people don't have. But I'm very weary of them. And I don't think if I didn't have that inflammatory digestion, I don't know if I would ever got there. So between the supplements and then the idea kind of being hollow, I guess that's my main beef with it. But Pedro, did you have another worst health trend fad of 2022?
I should have wrote some down. I'm sorry about this.
I've got some more.
Yeah, I'll go for
it. This is kind of like the seed oil meme, but that was specific. So that's a specific thing, right? It was like the idea that maybe, you know, PUFO or like high linoleic acid, industrially pressed oils are not good for public health, memeified into retardation. But more generally, so I'm sure you saw Dasha from the Red Scare posted that the carrot salad, the Ray Peat carrot salad is going to change her life or something like that. So I'm seeing, and now that Ray's passed, like he was already a legend. I mean, he was a legend 10 years ago, but of course, you know how these things go. That's going to enter a new phase of legendary status. And, so I think that his ideas were, I guess I can't say mainstream. I mean, it certainly wasn't like the seed oil meme, but I saw a lot of people that I was surprised. Like that guy that you hooked me up with in Stockholm, one of those guys that you knew.
Oh, you hung out with which one?
Leo.
Oh, dude, awesome! Shout out to
Leo. Now I have 2 Russian Leos. He does. He did an intensive 30-day movement training seminar thing with Ido Portal.
Oh, nice.
And that's who introduced him to Ray's ideas. So Ido Portal was, saying, "Oh, you guys got to," however he said it. He told his people that he was teaching his exercise modalities to. So that's like one. That's one degree of separation from Conor McGregor, so there is now Conor, if that had happened and it was more like 2015 to 2019, Conor, I forget the exact years, but a different part in his career, I think it would be a live possibility that the name Ray Peat could have come out of Conor McGregor's mouth, or somebody else like super famous like that. So I still think that's a live possibility, but I don't know that. I'm just saying, cause there was a clear path in that case through this trainer.
Instead, it's going to come out of TJ Dillashaw's mouth, and we're all going to say,
yeah. So anyway, the point is that's all great for what it is. But again, I hope that people are going to pop up and try to take the mantle of these ideas, and they're going to try to steer it. It's not going to be this. It's not going to be like a joke, like the seed oil thing. It's probably going to be like a more, an attempt to, create like influencer careers for people that kind of like maybe weren't around when Ray was alive, or are sort of like Johnny come latelys, or people that just, I don't know, that just it'll just become like a marketing term is what I'm worried about. And so I don't think that truly started in 2022, but I think the first kind of warning shots of like a mainstreamification of these ideas, like truly mainstream, like somebody that could, get to a truly famous person and have them say this on like TV or something. I think that has happened with Dasha. Was there anybody else famous? I know Paul Joseph Watson years ago said,
yeah, he
actually
he was
Ray.
like something about keto being basic bitch nutrition, and they should check out Ray Peat. Yeah, dude, there's something else that happened for sure this year. That Dasha one was probably one of the bigger ones. Dude, I can't.
Maybe we can get Kanye into it.
I would say the entire evidence-based crowd has been made aware of Ray. They're so aware of him now. Obviously, they pile him into the whole.
They hate
he's a
him.
quack. But they are very ill-informed about his perspectives. That's for sure.
The evidence-based like vegan people.
I would just categorize them as evidence-based in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I would categorize them as evidence cringe.
Yeah, that's a better way.
Yeah, like mainstream evidence cringe. I think you're right. So the possibility of the 2022 being the year that Ray's ideas are put out in the mainstream, but also at the same time being diluted to a great degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that being a bad trend. You said something that I've actually said many, many times in chats with people on Zoom. And then Joey had said it on our Remembering show, but basically like Ray was a living legend already. Like he was just like this dude that had legendary status, and now in death, if there's a silver lining at all, it's that he could become way bigger in death than he ever was in life. And so, and then a lot of people have been telling me like, oh, you and Georgie are the guys now. You guys are the guys that have to like continue it. And I was like, so I'm definitely not the guy for anything, but I feel like the responsibility, and many people have told me this in our Zoom call, so I'm not the originator of this, but needs to be dispersed through everybody. Like everybody has a greater responsibility that was introed to him and knew what he was talking about and stuff. And so, and also, I've been accused of tarnishing Ray's legacy now, like maybe 4 times within a week, like of doing things that people didn't like.
Speed run.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that the rest of my life, people will be. Anytime I do something people don't like, I'll be accused of tarnishing Ray's legacy. So that I'm really looking forward to that.
Hey, join the club.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Okay. Okay. So Pedro, if something comes to you, or maybe we can talk about this. So I think vitamin D is toxic. I mean, that's kind of over now, as far as I can tell. But that was something that hit me in my gut, and so well, I've talked about it ad nauseum. But if you want to push back on that, I'd be happy to hear why I'm wrong.
So let me first get the perspective right, because I know this is in relation to how you and Matt Blackburn have the vitamin D discussion. You believe vitamin D is toxic? Because I think that's his perspective too. Like it was too much vitamin D from, I don't know who that guy was.
No, Danny doesn't think
I don't think it is. I think it's okay. I think cholecalciferol is safe. And so again, this is kind of crazy to talk about because Matt doesn't even hold that idea anymore. He's completely backtracked on it. And, but that was like a lot of 2021 and 2022 was, so I talk to people like every day. I'll talk to like 8 people every day. And I would say like 70% of the people I talk to were all under the impression that vitamin D was this toxic thing that you absolutely didn't want to take. And so Matt's so good at like marketing or spreading his ideas. Like everybody thought that vitamin D was unsafe. And so I felt like one of the sole people standing up for vitamin D and saying that it was a useful thing, like a safe therapy. And so, but I'm pro cholecalciferol. That's the basic idea.
Yeah, from my stance first, I'm definitely pro all the metabolites of vitamin D because there's so many, and all of the steps are involved in some important physiological process, like the formation of the corticosteroid itself on the skin is one of the things that helps prevent UV damage. Like it's able to absorb UV light and distribute it as if the energy dissipates as heat. So even the precursor forms of vitamin D are important. But I think that I think it's Morrison, right? Jim Morrison was the guy that first explained
Stevenson.
Oh, Jim Stevenson. He basically stated that the storage form that you find in the blood, 25 hydroxy vitamin D, if you have a lot of it, would suggest that you have an overdose, right? Is that correct?
So I think he was saying that the 25 hydroxy is a storage form, and it basically doesn't do anything. And it's only really good when it's converted into the
125
calcitriol, primarily in the kidneys. And he was saying that's active vitamin D, and that has all the positive effects. And so again, the basic thing where I stand at the moment was that calcitriol was turned on by a bunch of things that happened in stress. So, for example, like estrogen turns on that enzyme, the 1-alpha hydroxylase enzyme that converts the calcifediol into the calcitriol. And so it's like, how can this be the thing you want if prolactin turns it on or estrogen turns it on? And it seemed like something that was involved in cellular proliferation, like the renewal, like the estrogenic kind of renewal of a tissue, rather than something you wanted to focus on for like the differentiation of like a structure or something. Like
I would definitely think about it because the physiological processes can range all of the time, and so you can get good effects and bad effects from the same 125 dihydroxy D3. But the chemistry behind it is that the second hydroxyl, when you add the one carbon or the first carbon hydroxyl group, it basically allows the molecule to then cross into the nucleus, and so it can interact with DNA and then cause a nuclear effect. So the 25 hydroxy, it has some of that effect, but not as much. And so it's essentially the same molecule. It's just how big of an effect can you get from vitamin D3? And in my opinion, it doesn't make that big a difference. And I do think that the 25 hydroxy form is the form that you want to have a good amount of so that you can make 125 when you need it. But in my opinion, you're absolutely right that it's made under most stressful conditions because it acts as a buffer to reduce the stress. For example, calcitriol helps produce antimicrobial peptides during infections. And so you would expect it to rise to combat the infections.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it. Like that's the primary system for holding down the stress response, and then that calcitriol is made when you have a lack of the precursor. And so that was like part of the annoying part of having this argument over and over is Jim Stevenson would say, well, like that's like making bread without the water. Like he'd use a bread analogy over and over and over again. But like you guys know this better than anybody, but like hormones aren't made, like they don't fall into buckets. Like you could have more of a precursor and that could stop the downstream metabolites from being produced. In the case of pregnenolone would inhibit the production of cortisol and by lowering CRH or whatever. So it's, so again, it was just talking past each other for like 2 years. And that's what was so frustrating to me, but thank God that's over and we never have to talk about it again.
If I can mention it, I think Matt has also changed his perspective on it recently. And I think one of the things is in relation to like genes. Some people have a higher conversion of it. Some people have a lower, but I think that's his perspective now.
Well, that's the great thing about Matt. He's always changing his mind. You know, that's the best absolute. That's what's so nice about not having a foundation at all. You can just change your mind on basically anything. Okay. Kyle, what another health trend of 2022? What do you think?
I might be out of them. Yeah. Cause I mean, the one that I mentioned before was the Liver King thing. He was a pretty big health trend, but I'm not even sure how many people really did like stuff. I mean, he didn't really give a diet plan per se. He just kind of showed, even Saladino sort of shows food in a way that's like, this is a meal example. Whereas Liver King, it was like very performative that he would just eat things as like almost like can I do this? Like, can I slunk 50 eggs or whatever it is? He was sucking all the, just like with the seed oil meme and all the stuff. It's like these people that aren't really contributing anything. They're just sucking oxygen. They're sucking out, I'm trying to come up with like a redox stress. They're sucking out,
making the hypoxic
oxidized NAD, and your ratio is just going down and down and everything's getting like retarded and senescent. But yeah, it's nice that this is actually, I mean, perfect timing. Like just at the end of the year, he's been, I guess, destroyed. I mean, we'll see where his brand ends up, but certainly was a long time coming, and everybody was like, he's taking steroids. And it was just another example of, like, for years now, I've talked to people and they'll be like, oh yeah, this person's probably natural. And it's like some actor that got like, gained, 20 pounds of like mostly lean tissue in like 3 months for a role. And they're like, yeah, well, he's got the best trainers. So, the best trainers, he's got the best trainers. So like, I could do that if I had the best trainers and like a live-in chef and the best trainers. And it's just like, no, you can't. You know what? Remember when I made that video about, sorry, I'm going pretty far afield here, but the problem with keto and things like exercise or any kind of process that requires energy at a rate that is faster than the rate from respiration.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably cobble together a video like that would give somebody some pretty good, like it would be a range, but a pretty good example of like, if you're not taking steroids, the hard time limits for building muscle tissue on an adult human frame, for like a normal person, like how many pounds. And you could kind of start like going from both ends, like, clinical studies of people and how much muscle can people, put on different diets or exercise, like untrained people or trained people or whatever. And like, what are the poundages of actual lean tissue you can expect in like a month or 3 months or a year? And then from the other end, like the micro scale, like how fast can like so many grams or so many, I don't know, milligrams or whatever of synthesized, or even like how long does it take in optimal conditions to like synthesize, muscle protein, like to elongate or like increase the bulk of like actin and myosin fibers in a muscle, and try to connect those together. And then compare it to like, steroids and how that process could be probably increased like anywhere from 3 to, I don't know, 10 times, depending what you're taking and how well you respond to it. But yeah, this whole thing where like people are arguing over who's taking steroids, and then the whole time, or people are skeptical about it because they just want to believe that there's something magic about this fucking idiot. Like, this guy's a clown. He's a clown. He might as well be in it's like a muscle suit. It's like a big fluffy thing. And he's like being a clown. He's being goofy. And somehow he's the only man on earth that's figured out how to look that way, not from taking steroids, but from just like eating a bunch of, liver basically, and other organs and glands and whatever. Like, and it's not, it's not like he's got a team of guys that are all on that diet and they all look that way. It's just him. And somehow that was credible to like, a million people, or, and that's bad. That's a bad, like, it's bad that people can just get like whisked away into this fantasy where they just want to believe that, I don't know, man, like, it's really crazy. It reminds me of when I was a kid in the 80s, and there were live debates about whether, now it's WWE, but WWF was real or fake, like whether they're actually fighting in the ring. And like adult men would believe that it was real. I don't know. Like, it's hard to remember because this, there wasn't even an internet. So it's just people, they're just like, yo, what do you mean it's not real? Like, he picked up that guy and like slammed him down. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Or like people who believe in the moon landing.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't even have the data.
Pedro, you're on a podcast with 2 moon landing deniers. How do you feel about that?
I don't mind at all. You guys can hold whatever view. I never looked into the moon landing, but I do know obviously that there's some inconsistencies. So, but I don't know enough about it. I'm
actually not like a hard moon landing denier anymore. I'm pretty, I have a moderate position. My moderate position is, and this is this isn't even a position. It's just like they have admitted that they did produce some fake footage for if the landing had failed, and they did air some of that fake footage during what they are also calling the real landing.
Is that true? I've never heard that before.
Yeah. I mean, it would take me a long time to find that specific, but like, yeah, because they got pinned down on a few pictures and videos that were obviously fake and different than other pictures and videos. And so they so from the perspective of a moon landing denier, this is a fallback position that they're taking, because like some of the stuff that they produce looked better than others or wasn't like physically consistent.
Dude, I am like almost incredulous to what you just said. I've never, that would like really shake the foundations of space stuff, that if NASA admitted any kind of tomfoolery around the whole thing, that seems like it would be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read, like when I was really into this, that they had said like, yeah, we made, like, in case the thing blew up or whatever, we made like footage that we could put, because it was on like TV, like
really?
television.
I've never heard that before.
Well,
that could be possible.
What was the evidence you guys saw for like why the landing was fake? It was like the damny one that made you say, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense.
Do you know what the best site is? And I'm only speaking for myself here, is Aulis. Just a minute. So
for me, it was the loss of the telemetry data.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Which I mean, there's like 2 or 3 things like that where it's like, my dog ate my homework level. Like, we just don't have that.
The biggest,
but my moderate position now is that it may be possible that like IQs and institutional coherence and ability has decreased so much that even that like our society actually peaked in the 60s. And like there were men that could accomplish this task with like a shittier computer than like, I mean, many times shittier than what's in my phone here.
Right.
And that's not possible anymore. I think that's also, I'm comfortable with that because that works on other narrative levels for me. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be, like the kind of people that are involved in these programs, like it wouldn't make me surprised for 1 second to hear like, oh, this thing was partially fake or totally fake or whatever, whether it's that or
right.
I'm trying to come up with like a war, but they were all fake. Like, like we knew that Saddam Hussein didn't actually have weapons of mass destruction, and like, gotcha. It's like, yeah, no surprises.
What we're looking at is image using stereoscopic imagery. And so again, I'm not an expert in this, but stereoscopic imagery is something to detect distance in an image. And so it wasn't made for these NASA images. It's just made in general. And you can, I guess you can accurately guess how far away something is from like the foreground object. And so this dude from Aulis.org, he's like a Russian guy. He put in all, like, because the problem with this NASA stuff is there's an orgy of evidence. There are so many photos, And so he put in the NASA photos, and the stereoscopic imagery shows that whatever is behind, like here, is only a few feet away. Because this, I guess if this was actually a mountain range that was very far away, it would, he has examples of it in this article, but it would move dramatically. Anyways, if somebody's interested in this, they can go check out Aulis.org. But I bounced this off Ray one time, and he was like, "That analysis looks good." Yeah, I was like, well, Ray, how did you like pay attention to the moon landings? He's like, no, me and my family didn't pay attention to them at all. And so he thought it was a way for NASA to launder money for rocket research. And so he said it was a big dog and pony show when it was happening. Anyways, Kyle, something you said that I had on my list was health influencers that don't have any actual work. So again, your paper on PUFA is so above and beyond most kind of standard internet health influencer people. And again, I'm not saying you're a health influencer, you're a scientist, but like that is, it seems like the quality of like people that are paid attention to with health stuff, like we deserve a better health influencer than the ones we have today. Like they're very, they make stories and things, and now you have to debate somebody's story that they made, and that's like the epitome of their work. And so I think that's just a sad state of affairs. Like if all these health people wrote an article, I think it would be immediately apparent that some of them, I mean, you could tell that they were just a bunch of slop that they were writing that had nothing to do with anything. And so those were my three, but I think the world deserves better health influencers.
I think I have one, Danny. The past year, I think there's been a lot of focus on easy water, like Gerald Pollack's work, but in my opinion, just mangled, and in a way it almost makes his work seem like it's pseudoscience. It's some of the best bioengineering work that you're going to find in any institution. But I think that one is a big one for me.
You're right. That was obviously Gerald Pollack has really good work, and people started selling easy water and things like. So do you think when you're drinking structured water, do you think that has any effect on the body?
I don't think that if you drink it, it's going to cause any effect, but I definitely think that if you expose yourself to sunlight, infrared light will hit the water and it will cause an exclusion zone, however minor it may be. I do think that's important in the healing process, but the idea that you need to have this machine now to create easy water, for example, so that you can have easy water to drink. If you literally, what Pollack's work is saying is if you put a glass of water outside in the sun, it'll naturally become easy water. That's what happens. So things like that have definitely rubbed me the wrong way, where it's like people are now coming up with devices for this.
And just overpriced hype that these devices just don't. You could just put water out in the sunlight and that'd be the same
sun.
thing. Yeah.
Right. But even then, it's like, I don't know if it would have any effect or any meaningful effect afterwards if you drink easy water. Naturally, your body's.
I can't imagine that it would.
Yeah, naturally, it's going to be.
I don't understand how that would happen.
Yeah, it's going to be making it like if you expose yourself to the sun naturally in your body. So I don't know.
Isn't the whole idea behind easy water that the proteins and the energy apparatus is structuring the water dipoles in a certain way? So
some matter.
Yeah.
You can make it with non-protein, but in the cells, it's proteins.
So it's like an event that happens at the cell level and not something that happens outside the body, or is that completely wrong?
No, I think you can do both. You can do both.
I mean, you have to make it with they make it, doesn't Pollack's process, don't they make it with like a capillary tube or something?
Yeah. Man, I forgot. Let me see if I can pull up his paper. But
it needs to interact with a solid that has the right, electrical properties to make it arrange itself in a certain way. It's not. And then if you take, I don't understand. I haven't been in this world for a long time, but I don't even understand how it could stay easy. Like I don't know, easy
energy.
ain't free,
Yeah, it requires energy all of the time to maintain that state.
Yeah, it ain't easy being easy.
Let's keep going if you have more. Let's go through some of these questions. Your Brain says, Kyle, ask Danny about his B requirement and ELAB.
Danny, what's your B requirement?
I don't even know.
Daily.
What does it be? Like B vitamins?
No. like the insect.
Is this some inside joke that I'm not familiar with? I don't.
Are you not familiar with Ray Peat inspired B restriction?
No, I'm not. I'm not familiar with this.
Well, let me just kind of spread the good word for a second here. The best Ray Peat meme group, or it's not really active anymore, but Ray Peat inspired B restriction is a group that celebrates people lowering the amount of Bs that they require daily. So if you're at very good health, you could get perhaps into the single digits of B requirement. And the best part about this group and the idea is that what that means, what I just said, is never explained at all. Like what I just said, like your daily B requirement and a number, that's all we know about it. And that's it. That's the explanation. So if that strikes you as funny or interesting, then check out Ray Peat inspired B restriction.
Okay, now I know. Now I know what it is. Okay, and then another one. I'm supposed to ask you about niacin, Pedro. What maybe the niacin flush? Maybe you're a fan of that, but doesn't that release things like histamine and nitric oxide and prostaglandin? So do you want to explain that?
Sure does. That's all there is to it. It absolutely does. It's true. You when you take the niacin flush, the flush is caused by prostaglandin binding to G-coupled protein receptor 120. So that is what causes like the vasodilation and everything. Histamine is produced and so on. And it is a negative consequence. And so people take aspirin or they take vitamin E to prevent this. The reason why I don't mind this so much is because it's a quick 30-minute event. It's not like you're in a chronic state of inflammation.
It's not quick.
I've only experienced like 30 minutes.
Flushed for 30 minutes?
Yeah. Oh, I get it now. Yeah, 30 minutes for flushing is a while. But I don't know. To me, I don't mind it. But the side effect that you get is a lot more glucose in the blood, a lot less fatty acids. And this is a residual effect. And so I feel a lot more aware with schoolwork. I'm a lot more able to concentrate. So it's something that I've only ever felt from taking niacin.
Mm-hmm.
Niacinamide has some effect, but it's never been as good as niacin. For me, it's just one of the supplements I do include, but it's completely true. You are producing prostaglandins.
So again, you know your body better than I ever will, but like, couldn't something involved in stress cause kind of an attention, like a higher degree of attention as subject? Maybe that could be induced through a stress mechanism that wasn't necessarily like good for the person per se.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, the niacin itself, it may not be the blood glucose, but the fact that you're stressing your body out, that's increasing the awareness, possibly as well. That's a possibility. The reason why I wouldn't think it's that is because it also helps me sleep better, but I'm not sure if that has to do with other mechanisms at play, but it's completely possible.
Well, it makes me think of like a sauna or a cold plunge, because people will do that and usually they'll get some kind of like boost afterwards. That's obviously a stressful event. And people often will say they sleep better or something like,
Kyle, you've gotten in the habit of eating a pineapple before bed, and that's like how you get to sleep.
What's this pineapple thing?
I don't know. Just you calling you Pineapple Man seems just appropriate. I don't know. Or
right.
Go-Go Nuts or Pink Dress.
Yeah. Squeezy. They call me Squeezy. They call me Go-Go Nuts.
I like what he's
They call me Pineapple Man.
I warned you once. I put you through a wall. I warned you twice. I scream at that.
I tell you one time. I'm going to throw you through a wall. I tell you 2 times. I'm going to start screaming.
Yeah, I'm going to start screaming.
I'm going to start screaming on that ass. I'll be like, oh.
Oh,
That's my best Sam Hyde.
It's the only thing that keeps me sane these days is watching those old clips. Okay, let's get to some of these, more of these. Oh, maybe I'm supposed to ask you about methylation as well, Pedro. Do you have any controversial views about that?
What's the question in specific? Does it have like a context?
At Danny Reddy, how about the idea that methylation is the key to disease/health?
Yeah, so I'm assuming they mean from like the whole MTHFR side of thing. Here's the interesting thing about methylation. The body will do it without you ever having any control over it. And it's one of the reasons why babies develop into full-grown human beings. There's a methylation pattern that occurs, and that's what they call the epigenetic clock, where you can see methylation increase as you get older. So if you have hypermethylation, you tend to have over-differentiation. You have hypomethylation, over-proliferation. It can be mixed in between those, not like a concrete definition here. But I definitely think that conditions that have an overexpression of non-good genes, for example, like if you're overexpressing prostaglandins, it's likely that the area where the gene is transcribed is hypomethylated. And if you were to add methyl groups there, you basically stop the overproduction of some of these genes. And that's how many of these therapeutics work, like vitamin D, vitamin A, and so on.
So when a cell is proliferating or dividing, is it undermethylating or over? You said it was undermethylating?
Yeah, when it's not like a fully demethylated state, but when you start as an embryo, you almost have zero methylation patterns in the entire genome. But as you start to grow older, the methylation increases. And so let's say you're a 65-year-old adult and the cell's experiencing division. There's still going to be methylation present in that 65-year-old adult person's cells. It's just a little bit less to allow the genome to kind of uncoil so that they can actually divide in the first place.
And is this something controllable through nutrition, like that you can affect your methylation cycles of cells?
So this is where I don't think it's controllable to a large enough degree, because if you could, you essentially would be able to divide your cells just by changing how you the foods that you eat. And that's not possible. Your cells divide on their own accord. However, it is possible to increase the amount of methylation or decrease the amount of methylation that can be done in a cell if you just don't, or you do supply methyl groups like certain amino acids, glycine is important, things like that.
Fair enough. I haven't gotten into this for a long time, but I remember kind of post paleo that when people thought that was like insufficient to solve health problems, people moved over to methylation and they were saying, oh, everybody's either an undermethylator or overmethylator, and you have to take SAMe, whatever the full name is. And that seemed like I engaged in that for a while, and I thought it was completely bankrupt so again, maybe just what they were saying was a bankrupt way to try to solve any type of health problem.
Yeah, it seems like
that's for the methionine metabolism.
Yes,
right?
Acetoadenosine methionine.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kyle.
The word is like means a lot of different things. So I think sometimes people are like, your chromosomes can be like, and different locations of different chromosomes can be relatively more or less methylated, and then metabolites and enzymes can be, have methyl groups attached to them in different processes. The famous one being the methionine metabolism cycle. But those are two different things that use, because a methyl group it's like the simplest organic molecule. It's like a 1 carbon deal. So it's like I'm attaching 1 carbon, like methane. That's just the
CH4.
Yeah, with the hydrogens. Yeah, that's the saturated. So all sorts of things can be attached. But yeah, when people talk about methylation, like the epigenetic one, that's different than, I would say that's like on the less controllable side from nutrition, whereas like the stuff happening in the cytoplasm or, not on the genetic side is more like if you're deficient in certain B vitamins for a period of time, you're more likely to have like those systems get messed up than your epigenetic systems, because that's like a much more long-term proposition.
We have one more here. Could you talk about using serotonin and cortisol blockers? Could there be any downside to suppressing those hormones? And what is the root cause of the elevation of those? That's a big question. You guys want to briefly address that? I think we need 30 minutes to parse that.
So how serotonin and cortisol can be blocked, essentially?
Yeah. Do you have experience with like trying to target those things specifically?
Yeah, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha really does block cortisol specifically.
Dude, you're the only person I've ever talked to with a good experience with ashwagandha. I almost always hear bad responses from it.
Yeah, I've definitely had the experience where it's like, oh, I feel moderate today, but it's not like I'm depressed or completely anhedonic. But I definitely think that if you take a lot, at least from my experience, you can get that way with blocking cortisol. And I don't like that feeling. It doesn't help me be productive with my day, especially. I just feel like sitting down and doing nothing if I get to that state. So I don't think it's good to completely block cortisol, but most people are they're producing cortisol in excess. There's too much in the bloodstream that it has a negative consequence. If you have a little bit of a cortisol blocker, every single day. And if you have a lot of stress in your day, I think it could help a lot. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, ashwagandha on paper seems like amazing. It seems like everybody would want to use it. And years ago, I would buy Sensoril and like these patented standardized extracts of it and stuff. And I felt like I could never identify precisely what it was doing for me. But on paper, I know it raises testosterone, blocks cortisol. It's like an amazing thing. Kyle, do you have any perspective on that?
I've never really specifically tried to like pharmacologically block those, just like eat carbs. And I gotta say about cortisol, I think that now this is not just the cortisol per se, but in the morning, it was during when I am probably having a cortisol spike relative to later in the day, right? There are certain things with my brain that seem to work better. Now, the reason why I say it's probably not just cortisol or that can't be replicated by just boosting cortisol is being stressed out all day or doing things that would increase my cortisol does not later in the day or at some other time cause that same effect. So it's kind of like a morning only effect, but I do believe it's related to cortisol. And so like what Pedro was saying, if you were to kind of smooth that out, you might, I don't know, like things like motivation and creativity, which are kind of maybe asymmetrically, cyclically distributed throughout the day, like so many things are. Like it's, it kind of comes and goes. And what you really want to avoid is like feeling weird and amped up all the time. And like, you can't, that you're like fidgety and you can't relax. And of course that you can't sleep. You don't want to be having this at bedtime. But I think that just like a normal balanced diet and reasonable things like that is how you achieve that. I don't really think you should be like hitting that stuff with drugs. Well, actually, the sponsor of this podcast is a mattress company, and maybe a good night's sleep would be a new mattress. What do you think about that? Just kidding. Did you watch that video? Isn't it bizarre? Oh yeah, I did. He's great. I want to, what I wish that I could get Dave Asprey hooked up with Raid Shadow Legends. Yeah. That would be genius. And you could get a special Warhammer if you purchase through his Instagram. That would be amazing. Yeah. And it says like biohacker on it. Yeah. It's a legendary item. A legendary drop for excellent, the father of biohacking. That's amazing. Okay, last one, then I'll let you guys go. This one says, phosphatidylcholine seems to reliably prevent asthmatic episodes like wheezing for me. Why do you guys think this is? What is possibly happening in your opinion? Do you guys have any perspective?
Let me check.
Phosphatidylcholine, from what I remember, was an anti-cortisol kind of supplement. And I can't recall how it's supposed to block cortisol, but that's what I took it years ago, and I remember that being the reason that I had purchased it. So that's like AKA lecithin, right? I thought it's some form more metabolized or something. Pedro, do you have it in front of you?
Yes, the choline substrate completely phosphorylated at one end. I think that's all it is, but I definitely know that it's one of the lipids that is part of the surfactant properties in lungs and the alveoli. So you have surfactant kind of coating the lungs so that you don't have things like asthma or bronchitis or anything like that. So that could be a reason why, in my opinion.
That was a more than adequate off the cuff answer, Pedro. Very good. No, I have talked to this person actually personally about this question before, and I didn't really have a good answer then. And I don't have a good one now. I mean, what it does is like you take it. It's what's used to like make mayonnaise and stuff like that, like lecithin, right? Because it's a diacylglycerol, and the third spot of the ester linked on the glycerol is taken up by a phosphatidylcholine, right?
Yeah.
Like a phosphate or a phosphate and a choline.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The tittle, I think, refers to the
other fatty acids. So it's an it's an amphipathic molecule. So it's it can interact with, because like there's you got your hydrophobes and your hydrophils, and fat doesn't like to mix with water and with like water soluble proteins, although there's sections of proteins that tend to be kind of hydrophobic, and especially if they have to interact with fatty acids. But anyway, then you have these molecules that kind of swing both ways, like ACDCs, and that is one of them. That's a really, really good one. And that's how you get the acid, like the lemon juice or the vinegar or whatever in mayonnaise, to surround the fat globules and make an emulsion. It stabilizes the emulsion.
Thanks for that,
in case anybody wanted to know the chemistry behind mayonnaise.
I went on Wiki, and it's literally everything we just said. Mayonnaise, pulmonary surfactant. So
awesome.
You also use it. I used to buy it for years ago. I used to drink a lot of kava. You know that kava.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like back when you couldn't just, there wasn't kava bars. Well, there were kava bars in Florida, but that was it. And you had to buy your kava powder from like a weird website that had like a really bad HTML setup. And, it would come from like whatever, Samoa. And they would always tell you when you extract it to mix it with lecithin to pull out, because the kava lactones are fat soluble. So you're extracting it with water and you get like twice as much, with that. So there you go. If you want to make kava at home, get a bag of lecithin.
Great stuff. About an hour 20. So we should probably pull the plug here. Pedro, let everybody know where they can find you on the internet.
Sure. So my Instagram handle is Thucydides, like the Greek guy. So if you just put THU and just Google that, you'll find the Instagram handle name. Otherwise,
hey, you cut out while you were saying the name. So go spell it one more time.
THUCY and DIDES, Thucydides. Otherwise, you could just go on my website, pedro.doamaral.com, and you'll find all the links to where you can find me.
And Kyle, same question to you, buddy.
Yeah, my Instagram was Genius Bits. And my YouTube is Nutrichronology. And I think actually one of my friends, he like rebought my domain name. So I think nutrichronology.com like exists again. But I don't think there's anything on there, but I might start putting stuff on there.
And your YouTube.
Damn, I wanted to talk about the nah, it's cool.
You know what? I have to piss so badly. We can't keep going. I'm like about to die. And so I could leave. Do you want to mention something that we can come back to it? Do you want to talk about Liver King or what?
No, I was going to say that, the research that I was like trying to start doing is sort of Ray inspired. That could be like a different conversation.
Let's do a part 2 and we'll talk all about it.
Okay.
Is it relation to what we talked about with the bioelectricity or different?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That sounds. I want to talk to you. If my bladder wasn't about to burst, I wouldn't want to talk to you about it. Hey, Kyle, Pedro, super fun. Everything I thought it would be. Thank you guys so much for ending the year right. Really appreciate it. You can find me on the internet, and thank you guys. We have an amazing viewership. You guys are very dedicated and very nice. Appreciate it, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace out, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay. Okay, we're good. I'll be right back. I have to piss like insane.
All right, go for it.